It's now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York, in freezing cold Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C. Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us in part by, you guessed it, my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold, and you can get a copy of this book right now, while you're watching or listening to this very show. Just go to Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble, or if you're looking to get a signed copy, just drop me an email, Billy@TalkinBoxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com, and we'll hook you up. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by the website, BillyCBoxing.com. You can check out all the latest and greatest news the sport has to offer, plus some updates on this show, et cetera, et cetera. Check that out. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. And yes, I've been honored to be part of the 2025 Florida Boxing Hall of Fame class. Just visit the site, BillyCBoxing.com. Click on the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame banner, and you can find out all about the induction weekend, which is Friday, June 20th through Sunday, June 22nd. I hope you can come down and join me and all the other inductees. It's going to be a great event at a beautiful venue. Just check out the all the information by clicking that banner on BillyCBoxing.com. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by Blackett Shopping Network. You want to save a ton of money on pretty much anything you might need, just visit our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the Blackett banner and start shopping. And if you click on it through our site, you get I think it's a 15% discount. And finally, today's show is being brought to us by CES Boxing, Jimmy Birchfield's Classic Entertainment and Sports, and their next boxing event. It's actually they have one on the 15th, but the next one I'm going to be going to is February 22nd. It's a Saturday night at Foxwoods. What a card! Right now, there's 12 fights scheduled. Visit our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the banner. You can't miss it, and get yourself some tickets. And if you go and make sure you stop by and say hey to me. Coming up on today's show, we got a great guest coming up later on the show, Jose Chelo Alonzo, a guy that I interviewed years ago, great friend, and what a story he is. So we'll be getting him a little bit later on the show. Plus, I got some boxing news to talk about, especially our topic today. And before I get started with that, I just want to give a shout out to everyone in the chat room already. My man Jesus, my buddy Joel, there right now, already communicating, which we love. So if you're watching or listening live, come on over to the chat room on YouTube, and we can get your comments involved. Speaking of which, my topic today is Turki Alalshikh. How can he help boxing long term? We're talking long term. So I've been talking a lot about His Excellency on this show. And first and foremost, I just want to say that he's already brought some life into boxing, back to boxing. And there's some pros and cons to this, okay, boys and girls. So what you've heard me say in the past is, boxing has a tendency to follow the money. All right. I mean, look, hey, listen, His Excellency, if you're watching or listening, don't get mad at me. But that's what happens. They follow the money, right? And as soon as His Excellency started putting on these boxing events, all the promoters started, flocking to him. And we got some high profile, big time promoters that are working with him. Eddie Hearn from Matchroom and Frank Warren from Queens Berry Promotions. And I know Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy Promotions is working with him. Now you got some other middle of the road promotion companies that you'll see work with him more, like Boxer, and some of the grassroots promoters, through the different networks like the Zone and ESPN Plus and et cetera, all the streaming, which has been bringing us boxing from all over the world. And I love it. I was involved with a social media communication the other day. And basically, I'll paraphrase, but the topic was about, boxing needs HBO back and Showtime and cable, and all these pay-per-views are killing us, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's the thing. The pay-per-view model, I do agree, is hurting. And I say that because most people, as soon as the pay-per-view, not I, but most people, when they want to watch a fight that's offered on a pay-per-view model, the first thing they try to do is what? Find an illegal stream, right? Nobody wants to cough up the coin. This is where I feel that streaming services like the Zone and the others I mentioned are a big plus. Because you can subscribe to these and get these, normal fights. Now, yes, they do have the higher profile fights that you're going to have to pay for, but that's just the way it is because those fights demand bigger money. And again, this is where His Excellency comes into the picture. He's shelling out a lot of money. I don't know, honestly, if his promotional company is making money or anything, but he's certainly getting it on the right track. The first thing is he started making the fights that other promoters can't make. And by offering the money, he got the fighters to step in the ring, which is beautiful. The other thing he's doing is he's ripping a page out of Don King Promotions, championship fight cards where you have, tons of fights that are all quality fights. Now, remember, when you have a pay-per-view, I don't care what anybody says, they're not looking at an undercard and saying, oh, so-and-so is fighting so-and-so on the undercard of, this big event. I'm going to buy it because I want to see that fight. No, the sell, the hook has to be the main event. But the added, side dishes, so to speak, are the other events, the other matches that are on the main event, on the card. And, Don King used to do this all the time. When you'd watch a Don King, major event, you got to see a half a dozen beautiful fights. Well, His Excellency is doing the same thing. And, that's attracting promoters. They had that Matchroom against Queensberry little competition where they picked out the fighters. I loved it. I also love some of the smaller cards that maybe Turki Alalshikh is not involved with, but we get to see through the Zone. I personally think one of the problems with boxing here in the States is the time that it starts. I remember going, I've been involved in this business for a long time, and I remember going in the 80s, mid to late 80s in Vegas, checking out fights and stuff, watching guys like Terrence Ali, who was a big draw back in the day, and, going and watching him at the casinos. And those fight cards would start, 2:00 Vegas time. Why are they starting at 2:00? Because they're on TV here on the East Coast at 5:00. And then they started at 3 and start at 6, or they start coming on here in the East Coast at 7:00 at night. So they're starting at 4:00 out in Vegas, out west. But now, although sometimes the cards start a little earlier, if you're, let's say the card is in Vegas, they're not showing the main event here till 11:30 p.m. By the time the fight's over, it's 1:00 in the morning, and they start the walks or the intro or the build up. And I think we lose a lot of fans here. Turki Alalshikh, His Excellency, is putting on these fights Saudi Arabia time, which kind of sets us up here where fight cards, I'm loving when I see these big cards and they start at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning here in New York. And, they're over by 8:30 at night, all day boxing, and you're learning about these fighters. So I think, he acquired Ring Magazine, and you can subscribe now. It's available. And one of the things that I think that Turki Alalshikh, well, let me backtrack. Let me tell you one of the things I hope that doesn't happen. I think the dependency of a lot of promoters on Turki Alalshikh is going to set us up for a potential failure if His Excellency decides he doesn't want to deal with this anymore, or he decides that the country isn't making out, or his promotional company isn't making out the way they thought, and they decide, well, we're not going to do it anymore. I said last week I believe that would leave a huge void in the sport of boxing, and I think the sport of boxing has to be conscious of that, not to flock like they're typically used to, and just go to him, let him basically write the tickets. But I think Turki Alalshikh is in a position to set the foundation for boxing with or without himself. And if he really cares about the sport, which I believe he does, I think he is setting the foundation the correct way. One of the things he's done is he's publicly said that there's nothing wrong with having a fighter lose a fight. I am a huge fan. If you've watched this show or followed me for any long time, you know that I believe that the UK has the best boxing fans in the sport, and one of the reasons is the fact that they don't bail on their fighter, their favorite fighter, if he or she loses. Here in the States, we have a tendency to turn our eyes away from a fighter. We brag about how great our fighter does, regardless of who he's fighting. He could be fighting the taxi cab driver or the Uber driver, and they're pounding their chest after they beat up a guy that shouldn't have been in the ring with them, and their fan base is way supportive. But if he loses the fight, regardless who it is, they ditch him like old pair of jeans. So I think that his bottom line, what he's trying to sell us with the hey, it's not bad to lose. I think that kind of sets things up for him to be able to promote a little easier and better because his fighters, should they lose, he would still have people that will tune in or follow them, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that was a good statement that he made. And I also believe that it's very good for the sport. Another thing that he's done is he's taken over the Ring Magazine. Now, as you know, the Ring Magazine left physical print. It was digital only. Well, from what I understand now, the Ring Magazine is available in digital and print. So that's good. And I noticed that they're becoming more active and promoting the Ring champions. And I think that that's big. So one of the things that I think that Turki Alalshikh can do for the sport of boxing that'll cement it and it will help us for years to come, even if he decides to hang it up, would be to incorporate. Now, one of the things I will say this, he's mentioned the UFC model. Now, a lot of promoters have tried to copy that, and the way they interpret it was to keep their promotional fighters only fighting their own people, and sort of like the UFC, that's a league, right? And that prevented crossover fights for a long time. What Turki Alalshikh means is, the model of it's okay to lose, right? As long as you're a good fighter, get back up on the horse and fight somebody else, work your way back up. And I think that the best thing he could do, especially now, because the weakest link in the sport of boxing is the amount of sanctioning bodies that we have, and the fact that, I'm going to exaggerate here, but you could basically buy a belt. All right, if you have enough money, or your team has enough money, you can go to a sanctioning body, become a mandatory, and win a belt. Okay, I mean, let's be real. I mean, anybody that can name every type of belt between, not only world champion, super champion, interim champion, champion in recess, not even those. How about the international, belts and all the other ones? I mean, there's so many. I swear more fighters have belts than fighters that do not. But what I think would be great for the sport of boxing, maybe not so good for the sanctioning bodies. I had said a couple of weeks ago how I feel a league could actually work if the sanctioning bodies wanted to play nice. But I believe that Turki Alalshikh, now that he has the Ring magazine, should incorporate the ring belt and start putting value back to the ring belt. Now, when I say value, I know what he won't do, but the best thing he could do is bring back 8 weight classes. Okay. But let's assume he doesn't do that. All right. Let's assume we stay with all the weight classes that we have now. If the Ring magazine only recognized a world champion in each division, right? So now you only have one world champion in each division. And then you should, what that would follow suit is you would only have 10 top 10 contenders for each division. I mean, right now, if you look at the top 4 sanctioning bodies, you could conceivably have 40 different top 10 contenders for one weight class, right? I mean, that to me, that's ridiculous. To have that many people walking around saying they're ranked number 8. I'm number 8. Hey, me too. Me too. We're all number 8. No. So Turki Alalshikh is in a position where he could create tons of value with the ring belt and have fighters, want the ring belt, because the way that it worked, the way it used to work, and the way that Turki Alalshikh could incorporate it again is have it the ladder aspect, the ladder system. You're number 10, you fight number 9. The winner fights number 8, and you climb the ladder. So the champion, the guy with the belt, the world champion in that division, is constantly fighting the number 1 contender. We don't need to have a guy sitting at the number 1 contender spot forever. We don't have to have a number 2 contender not rated because nobody paid to be in that spot. Come on, go look at the ratings. Go look at the ratings, and you'll find several weight classes with sanctioning bodies that don't have a guy ranked at number whatever. Okay, why is that? If you can't find a number 2 guy, how do you have a number 1 guy and skip over the number 2 guy and have a number 3 guy rated? How does that work? Doesn't it make sense where the number 3 guy is actually the number 2 guy, et cetera, et cetera? That's the scam of it all. And I think Turki Alalshikh is in a good position right now to make the value of the ring belt the way it once was and follow suit with the contender system so that a fighter works his way up to number 10 and blah, blah, blah. Now, should you have a vacant title if you don't have it? Well, guess what? It's a pretty easy solution, right? Number 1 fights number 2. That's the way it is, right? Number 1 fights number 2. And the winner of that becomes the champion, and the loser maybe drops down a spot, and then you have the next guy in line go up, and then they fight, right? So conceivably, a guy that could lose a fight, he gets a championship, he gets a title shot, he loses the fight. If it's for a vacant title, he drops down. Maybe he drops down 1 or 2 spots, but he's still in the mix to be back again. And it's likewise, if a number 10 guy loses to the number 9 guy, well, now the number 11 guy is into the number 10 spot, right? So that's what he could do. And some of these things would add some of these other promoters. I talk about Jimmy Birchfield's Classic Entertainment and Sports. We had Jimmy on the show, and he's scheduled to come on the show pretty soon in the future. But one of the things that they do, he's what I call a grassroots promoter. This is a guy that goes out there and sells sponsorships, sells tickets, has people coming in, filling up arenas, whether they're big or small, and he's got a brand. Another guy that does that, that's a grassroots promoter here on the East Coast, is Star Boxing. Joe DeGuardia does the same thing. They just had their 50th show at the Paramount Theater or they're going to have their 50th show in the Paramount Theater in Long Island. And Joe Smith Jr., former world champion, is going to headline that. Joe Smith Jr. had a lot of fights at that venue, right? And he worked his way up, got a world title shot, became a world champion. Bobby Hitz, out of the Chicago area, another grassroots promoter. These are guys that go out there, knock on doors. They're selling sponsorships. They're making money other than tickets because it's difficult to be able to pay the fighters and pay the expenses of a fight when you don't have added money. Now you sprinkle in these streaming services like DAZN and ESPN Plus and even ProBox TV, Fight TV, Thriller. My man Joe is in there. I know he wants me to mention that. You got these services that are offering you these club level shows, and the benefit of it, although I get it. Nobody likes to have to buy different streaming services from all different places, but it gives you the opportunity to see club level shows, and gives you the chance to familiarize yourself with the fighters, so that when your fighter is fighting somebody and you're like, who's that guy? What do you mean he's ranked number 3? I never heard of him. Well, when you sprinkle in the sanctioning bodies and their claws because they want the money, all those things. So Turki Alalshikh, I really believe that he's a breath of fresh air for the sport of boxing. I think we needed a guy like him. And I think that, he's in a position to really, help the sport learn long term, whether he personally stays involved with it or not. I love what I hear come out of his mouth. I love what I see posted. They have a real good promotional team that they're promoting outside of Saudi Arabia. I think the next best thing for Turki Alalshikh to do is start focusing on the ring championships and start creating the value, because if the fighters that come and, obviously His Excellency wants the big fights. So in order to get those fighters, forget the sanctioning bodies from all the other, bodies, and focus on the ring magazine belt, the ring belt. That's the linear championship anyway. Let's continue with that. So His Excellency, if you're watching, that's what I think you should do. And I think it would be very beneficial, not only for you and your promotional company, but for the sport of boxing. That's my opinion. And Coach is in the chat room right here. He's saying Star Boxing has its own streaming service. Yeah, and that's what you don't want. You see, this is the same thing. Joe DeGuardia is a great guy. All right. I love the guy, but you can't be on your own. You're not going to compete with DAZN. Joe's never going to compete with DAZN. If he wants to stay in his own little world, in Long Island and Bronx and stuff like that, fine. But that's not the way to do it. You need to expand out. Joe has a great and if they're using it, so hey, I can't go see Joe Smith Jr. this time, but I can watch it on Star Boxing streaming service. They all wanted to have it. They all started. Everybody wants to copy because they all see dollar signs. But then you get a million one and dones. Joe's not a one and done. He's been in this business a long time. But I just saw on social media, another promoter did a show, lost his ass, can't pay anybody. All the fighters, all the people that are involved in the event, they get screwed. So and that falls on the commission's fault, because it's very easy. It's very easy to get a promoter's license. All you need is to have the bond put up and pay for all of this and that. But I think they should go a little deeper. They should make sure that a promoter, especially a first-time promoter, has the finances to back up an event. So in any event, I hope that Turki Alalshikh continues doing what he's doing. I think it's great for the sport. I think all these streaming services, the major ones that stream multiple promotion companies like the Zone, to me, that's where boxing is. And if you go back and listen, Coach will tell you he's been watching this show a long time. I'm sure Joel can too. I predicted this 15 years ago. I said that you'd be watching, you'd be paying for what you wanted to watch. And, I thought maybe it would be one company that would stream all of the boxing events around the world. But, as it is, it's breaking into two. But eventually it could become one major one with with other smaller streaming companies under that umbrella. Some boxing news I want to talk about is we talked briefly last week, but it looks like Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia will be fighting, but first they have to fight some other fights under Turki Alalshikh. The first event is looking to happen in May. Rumor has it that it's going to be in New York, but that's not been announced officially yet. But he's going to be promoting it, and it will be somewhere in the United States. I did hear that they're trying to get in New York. Ryan Garcia's ban is lifted in April, so this would make sense. And when you're suspended in the state of New York, technically you're not allowed to go near a gym. So that's why they couldn't have the fight right in April. They have to assume that he's going to just start training after the ban is lifted, which we all know that's not going to happen. Now, originally, I heard that Ryan Garcia was going to fight Isaac Pitbull Cruz, but I just recently saw now Raleigh Romero as listed as Ryan Garcia's opponent. Pitbull Cruz has another fight, so maybe they couldn't promote that fight until he wins his next fight. Devin Haney is tentatively scheduled to fight Jose Ramirez. And then the heavyweight, Martin Bakole, taking on Effie Ajagba. Martin Bakole is that big monster guy that has got a powerful punch. I'd like to see him and Zhilei Zhang fight. I think that would be a good fight. Both of them aren't exactly speed demons with their hands. But now, you heard me mention promoters. One that I think was terrible, and not that I want to mention Turki Alalshikh's name by any means associated with Al Heyman, but if you recall, when the PBC came out, Al Heyman, everybody thought that he was saving boxing too. Remember, we saw all these fights for free. It's on free TV. I've lasted 1 year. It was on free TV. Now, and he was paying the fighters outrageous amounts of money, which altered the scale. And the bottom line, in case y'all forgot, Roy Jones' song, right? In case y'all forgot, the thing is he had a war chest. People gave him money to do this. And I, for some reason, the number that sticks in my head is 500 million that he had. He was spending that money like a drunken sailor, and they were on networks and all this stuff. Then all of a sudden, the money ran out, and the sponsorships did not come, and it fizzled out. And the PBC is a laughing stock, in my opinion. Now all the PBC does is pay-per-views. That's it. And they announced Tank Davis. He's going to be fighting, and Roach. He's going to be fighting Roach on in March, right? And they announced the undercard of that. All right. So in addition to that fight, it's with Lamont Roach. I'm sorry. You got WBA, their title fights. WBA super lightweight champ Jose Venezuela is taking on Gary Russell. That's the co-main. The WBC super lightweight champion Alberto Puello is defending his title against Sandor Martin. And the third one is Ioannis Tellez is fighting former world champ Julian Williams, known as J-Rock. Now, this is coming back on what is it, the streaming service there, but it's a pay-per-view. So it's Prime Video, and now it's a pay-per-view, right? And it doesn't matter whether you subscribe to Prime or not. Look, I'm going to tell you something. All right. I'm not buying this fight. I'm not buying this fight in any way, shape, or form. All right. Look, I like Tank Davis. I think he's an exciting fighter. I don't think that he's a pay-per-view fighter. I believe pay-per-view fighters should be reserved for the fight that everybody wants to see. Tank Davis going up against Shakur Stevenson, or Tank Davis against Lomachenko. Okay, that's a legitimate pay-per-view, in my opinion. But Tank Davis going up against Lamont Roach, look, Lamont Roach is a champion, but he's moving up to fight Tank Davis. So I don't think that the card is a pay-per-view. And if you go back to what I said earlier, the truth of the matter is simple. Just because there's two other world title fights, three other world title fights on this card, doesn't justify the pay-per-view. And then to top it all off, if I got to listen to Mario Ronaldo, I mean, please, it's painful. It's a painful fight. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying the fight, and I don't think anyone should. The PBC is awful, in my opinion. And the fighters, granted, there were some good fighters with the PBC who made some good money, but they saw the sinking ship and they bailed. And the ones that bailed are still relevant in the sport of boxing. The ones that didn't are hanging around. I saw a bunch of posts on social media by Errol Spence Jr. telling people, "Well, I'll come back when I want to come back." Well, the truth of the matter is here's a guy that had all this talent. I mean, if you look at Adrian Broner, he had all this talent. Tank Davis has got tons of talent. And then these guys start following the wrong path. Errol Spence starts, and they all seem to be the same PBC type guys, the Floyd Mayweather style. Now, Floyd never did. Listen, Floyd may lead other fighters to the club and doing all this stuff, but Floyd always took care of himself. You guys know I don't like Floyd, but the credit I always give him is that he was always in shape. He always took care of his body. And he never subjected himself to some of the things that some of these other fighters are. And at the end result, what you see is Errol Spence drinking and driving and ruins his eye in that fight, in that accident. Then he was never the same after that. I mean, do I even have to mention Adrian Broner? I mean, look what happened to him. I mean, he's, I don't know. All he does is party and doesn't even train anymore. It's a shame. And it's all the same group. It's that same bunch of guys. And the other thing is they don't even fight outside their own promotional company. Hey, look, the Chelo brothers were frauds. I mean, come on, they didn't fight anybody, and they're thugs, they're punks. Anyway, the fight card was set. It's taking place March 1st. Personally, I have no interest in the fight, and I'm not going to watch it. I'll watch the highlights the next day. I'm sorry. It's, to me, none of those fights are worth a pay-per-view. I'm sorry. And the fact that Ronaldo will be involved with it. I listen, if I'm going to watch fights, especially if I have to pay for them, I don't want the commentators yelling and screaming at me. I just want to watch the fight. So my man Oliver says, I don't understand why these promoters put the fights on pay-per-view. Isn't their loss greater as opposed to putting it on streaming? Because they're, in my opinion, I was mentioning the grassroots promoters like Joe DeGuardi and Jimmy Birchfield, Bobby Hitz, etc. Those guys, they're selling tickets. Coach mentions the Paramount always being sold out. Well, that's because Joe was successful in developing a brand, and the fighters, hey, they're going to have fights at the Paramount next month. Bam, they buy their tickets because, it's a fun night out, because of the hard work that Joe DeGuardi put into Star Boxing. Same thing. I'll be at ringside at Foxwoods on February 22nd, Jimmy Birchfield. I'm sure it's going to be sold out. They always are. And it's the same thing. People know the brand. And the fighters are generally local fighters, so they have support there. When you have a pay-per-view, a lot of times, if it's not a high-profile fight like we just saw Usyk and Tyson Fury, if it's not a fight like that where the whole world wants to see it, and it's a fight that is so meaningful for the sport, then you have a promoter that's sitting back counting money before he sells a ticket. I call it the Don King syndrome. And I'll be honest, I felt the first promotion I ever did, it was in the state of New York, and I lost my life savings in that fight because I thought the same thing that a lot of these one and done guys did. I learned from it and did pretty good after that. In other states, New York was a very expensive state to start off in. So I give credit to guys like Joe DeGuardia, big time, Lou DiBella, all these guys that do the fights in New York State. Speaking of PBC, did you see that Keith Thurman is scheduled to fight again? All right. He's fought one time since he was totally, since Manny Pacquiao beat the snot out of him in 2019. He's fought one time since then. Okay. He's 30 wins, 1 loss, 22 of his wins coming by knockout. I could have sworn that he had more than 1 loss, but he's 36 years old. Now, he fought one time because he's got he's the man with the plethora of excuses. You remember he got into a car accident? I saw all the clips. The car had a shopping cart hit it. That kept him out of a fight. He got sick. He hurt his elbow. He had to rearrange his sock drawer. I don't know. But he backed out of all of these fights. Well, he's 36 years old now, and he's an awful commentator too. PBC must have to, a lot of times he's on those. But he's fighting a kid in Australia on March 12th. All right. And he's taking on Brock Jarvis, who's 22-1 with 20 of his wins coming by knockout. And Keith Thurman says, and I quote, I'm reminding people who Keith Thurman is, and I love it. He talks about himself in the third party, third person, like Roy Jones Jr. used to, Roy Jones, you're sitting there talking to Roy and you're like, hey, Roy, what do you think about this? And then Roy will say, well, Roy Jones Jr. thinks that, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I thought you were Roy Jones Jr., but Roy Jones has got, come on, look at his resume and look at Keith's. But he says, I'm going to remind people who Keith Thurman is by beating up some kangaroo. He says, I'm going to fly over there. I'm going to get this kangaroo and come back and fight to Zoo. I'm sorry. He's talking about Costa Zoo's son, Tim. He says, if that's the entertainment you guys want. And his opponent, Jarvis, says, well, I'm about to beat up an old man who is well and truly past his time. He stated he's a power puncher, but he hasn't knocked anyone out in 10 years. Look, the truth of the matter is Jarvis is just about 10 years younger than Thurman. This fight is going to be fought at middleweight. Thurman's best days were at welterweight. And the truth of the matter is that, Jarvis, who's 10 years younger, is a legitimate middleweight. So, he's a big guy. He's a strong guy. Although he hasn't beaten anyone of note to date, and his only top-rated opponent, which was Liam Paro, blew him out in 1 round back in 2022. He can knock people out. He is a power puncher, and I think he's going to beat up Keith Thurman. But then again, I also have a feeling that Keith Thurman will pull out before March 12th. I think that he'll come up with an excuse, like I said earlier, like, I can't fight March 12th because I just realized that I got to rearrange my sock drawer on that day, and I'll make it another time. No, I wouldn't count on Thurman showing up for the fight. And if he does, it's not going to end well. I don't see him winning. As long as Jarvis, and I've never watched Jarvis fight, I just I studied some of the fighters that he has fought, and he hasn't fought anybody any concern fight. But as long as Jarvis doesn't chase him around the ring, because Thurman's going to be on his bicycle, as long as that doesn't happen, I believe that Jarvis, I think youth will prevail in this fight. And I never thought much of Keith Thurman, and I can't stand fighters that talk as much smack as he did and never backs it up. There's some good fights starting tomorrow at 4:15 a.m. on ESPN. Inoue is taking on a last-minute sub in Yi Jun Kim, who claims that he doesn't know why everybody's so afraid of Inoue. He says, it should be easy work. He's going to knock him out. This is what he said. There's another fight on tomorrow, too. Naji Lopez is taking on Lennon Castillo on Pro Box TV. But Saturday, we got a couple of good fights. Dalton Smith is taking on Vlad Ozua in the UK. And Diego Pacheco is taking on Steven Nelson. That's going to be in Vegas, and that's on DAZN. And speaking of Pacheco, I'll talk about this fight right now. Now, I'll mention Steven Nelson first. He's 20-0 with 16 knockouts. He's ranked number 13 in the world by the computer, and the WBO has him at number 13 as well. He's not rated in the WBC, IBF, or WBA. He's 36 years old, which is 13 years older than Pacheco. He's 5'10", orthodox fighter, 6 inches shorter than Pacheco, and he's got a 75 and a half inch reach, which is 3.5 inches less than Pacheco. When I look at his record, yes, he's got some power, 16 knockouts of his 20 fights, 84 rounds as a pro. But his best win out of his 20 fights was actually his last fight, when he beat then undefeated Marcos Rodriguez, who was 20 wins, no losses, and 1 draw. And he knocked him out in the 5th round of that fight. So I mean, he's it looks good on paper, but listen, I had some in social media asking me. I had posted, what should the topic be, and they wanted to know about Pacheco. Well, let me tell you about Pacheco. Let me tell you about Diego Pacheco. Diego Pacheco, he's got a few extra rounds over Stevens, but Steven Nelson, but only 92. But here's the deal. He's 23 years old, all right? Substantially younger. What was it? Was it 13? Yeah, 13 years younger, all right? 6'4", orthodox fighter, 79-inch reach. His record, 22 wins, no losses, 18 coming by knockout. He's a big, strong, fast, and elusive fighter who's young. And this kid is, I like what I see with Pacheco. Now, here's the thing with Pacheco. His last 5 fights, I just said Nelson had 1 fight that I give him credit for. I'm going to give credit for Diego Pacheco's last 5 fights. And these were them. These were those. In March of 23, he stopped Jack Cullen in Jack Cullen's hometown, Liverpool, in 4 rounds. Again, in 2023, in July, he stopped Manuel Gallegos in 4 rounds. In November, count them, 3 fights in 2023. All, that's pretty busy by today's standards. He stopped Marcelo Cosores in 9 rounds. He kicked off 2024 in April when he won a decision over Sean McCarman. And in August of 2024, he stopped Majik Saluki in 9 rounds in his last fight. All 5 of those fighters are legitimate fighters. This kid is good. I tell you, I predict him beating Steve Nelson. I think Steven Nelson's going to be a tougher fight, but I don't know if it's going to go to distance. I think that Pacheco's a little too strong for him, to be honest with you. So we'll wait and see on that. But a couple of good fights that I do believe that he should or the powers that be should consider for him would be I think that one of, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I believe that Jamie Munguia is a good fight for him. And I also like Christian Mabili. I think that would be a good fight, assuming he gets by Nelson, or even Edgar Berlanga. Berlanga coming off the loss to Canelo. 3 fights. Now, this is my point about fighters, and Pacheco has an opportunity, in my opinion, to change the narrative on what some of these American fighters do. Instead of taking now, no disrespect to Steven Nelson, but Steven Nelson started a little later. He's 36 years old. He's got a good record, 20-0, and that's why Pacheco is fighting him. It looks good on paper, but when you look at it deep, the talent level is oceans apart. Okay, oceans apart. And I think that what Pacheco should do now, most likely, his team is going to be careful with him, and I believe that that they will, look for a title shot, or maybe give him another Steven Nelson next. But I think that a fight that could be made with one of those fighters I mentioned, Munguia or Mbili or Berlanga, they're challenging. They're challenging Pacheco to win against a tougher opponent. But all 3 of those guys are ranked. That means, and by the way, Pacheco is ranked number 4 in the world on a computer. He's number 1 for the WBO, number 3 for the WBC, and number 6 for the IBF. He's not rated, shockingly at all with the WBA. Top 12. He's not even ranked, which goes to back up what I was saying earlier. But the smart thing to do, I know what a business guy or a promoter or a manager is going to say. Let's take, if we have to take another fight, let's maybe fight a weaker one and hope that we're become a mandatory or what have you. But a good fight for Pacheco would be against one of these 3 guys. It could be an elimination fight against one of those guys because of the rating that they have. But it's also a test for the young Pacheco. And I say test, it should be a test he passes, but he should also get the opportunity to continue improving and increasing his level of opposition. Like I mentioned earlier, he had 5 good fights. His last 5 fights are all against good opposition. This fight on paper looks good, but a fight against Mabili or Berlanga or Munguia is definitely a better fight, and it could be an elimination fight for a title. Now, if he's, I didn't check the ring ratings, but I don't know if he's ranked in the ring. I would assume he has to be if he's ranked so high with at least 3 out of the 4 sanctioning bodies. So, I would think that he would be ranked in the ring ratings fairly high. But this is what I think, for a guy like him. He's a good one to watch. I definitely think he's going to be a world champion someday, without a doubt. I have no doubt in my mind that he will be a world champion someday. No doubt in my mind. Well, as promised, we have a guest today, and I'm going to bring him on here in a second. But let me tell you a little about my man, Jose Chelo Alonzo. He's a former super middleweight contender. He won the Florida State super middleweight title with a win over Adam Jocko back in 2011. He retired in 2012. He's a 2024 Florida Boxing Hall of Famer, and he's being inducted into the Indiana Boxing Hall of Fame this year. This is a guy that climbed the ladder in the sport of boxing, ended up getting shot. He almost died. He recovered from that. And what does he do? Like a true fighter, he picks himself up off the canvas, turns his life into a success. He's got a beautiful family. He's got a successful business. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, please welcome my man, Jose Chelo Alonzo. What's up, my man?
What's up, brother? How's it going, man?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Just I called you earlier. We were talking about the weather, but you were making fun of me, so I don't want to talk about the Florida weather.
Yeah. Cello calls me.
But it's cold. It's cold here.
Cello calls me before. He says it's freezing here in northern Florida. I'm like, don't talk to me about freezing, man. We're in a warm streak right now. It's 13 outside, But
yeah.
Anyway, you know what? In my opinion, you're really a good example for fighters, because so often you hear the story of a fighter who fights his career and then they leave boxing, and a lot of times you hear not so good things, but you to me you should be a trendsetter, because you are so successful in life today, and obviously you had a good career in boxing. What made you? Was there any secret to it? I mean, how did you get to where you are today from boxing, after boxing?
Well, I mean, honestly, I got into boxing. I was 7 years old. I had moved to Puerto Rico. I'll make this part quick. I moved to Puerto Rico because I always looked up to my uncle. May he rest in peace. His name was Jose Rios. I call him Tio Jungo. I went to Puerto Rico, from Newark, New Jersey. And when I went there, I thought I was going to get loved, with the Puerto Ricans, and they didn't. They said I was from the outside. I was from the United States. I'm a nice outsider. I'm not a true Puerto Rican. That's what I dealt with at 7 years old. So I went to school for a short period of time. I had A's in English. Everything else I struggled with because I wasn't able to read or write Spanish at that time. So back then, there was no bully. You either had to defend yourself or get punked, pretty much. So I was fighting a lot, and that's how I got introduced to boxing. My great-grandfather, may he rest in peace, he got pretty much annoyed and told my uncle he didn't come out here for this, but they weren't realizing the really what was happening. And it was me getting picked on, so I had to defend myself. So my uncle took me to the gym in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, to scare me, and I fell in love with the sport. And I had, I think, 2 amateur fights out there. I moved to Newark, New Jersey. I trained a lot in the boys club in Newark, New Jersey. Then I moved down here to Florida, and I went amateur. And I think I entered a Golden Glove tournament, and I think I was 2-1 as an amateur, and I won the Golden Gloves. I think it was the novice division. Then I met Don Khan. I went pro in 1998. And when I met Don Khan, he had me literally, Billy. He was promoting a show in Tampa, and literally had me follow him without saying one word to me for like half an hour. Finally, he turns around. He goes, "What do you want?" I said, "I want to be a champion." He goes, "That's what everybody says." He goes, "Do you know what it takes to be a champion?" I said, "No, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." He goes, "That's what everybody says." Literally, that's how he's talking to me, Billy. I'm like, Don. So I turned around, and he finally turns around. He goes, "All right, meet me at Kata's boxing gym on Kennedy at 8:00 in the morning." So me and my dad got there around 7, and I sparred this heavyweight. I was probably at that time was light heavyweight. I sparred this heavyweight journeyman, and I knocked him down, I believe, in the second round. And Don started laughing. He goes, "I can work with you. I'll make you a champion." And started my journey. And in 2003, I won the WBA Feather Central title. And then 2 weeks after that, I broke my ankle. I retired for 8 years. And that's when I fought on 11-11-11 for the Florida State title against Adam Jaco. So I say all that because that has been my journey. I had 13 wins, 1 loss with 7 knockouts. But throughout that journey, there's so many things that I went through that people don't know. you know. And to answer your question, now that you have a little basis on my little story, it's drive, determination, wanting to do something for yourself. And for me, you know, I came from a tough background, like many, I would say, man, a lot of fighters do. Mine was by choice. You know, I left my house when I was 16, and I always wanted to make my parents happy, and boxing was what it was for me. And you know, I live here in Hernando County, one of the best counties in the world to me, and I've been here since I was 14 or 15 years old, and won Golden Gloves, and started my career, brother. And when I fought for that 12-round fight, I never fought a 12-round fight before that. Never fought an 8-round fight before that. And I trained behind my home, Billy, with a 250-pound punching bag. And that's how I trained. I didn't have a vehicle. I think I sparred twice. I played basketball, handball, and I ran like Forrest Gump. And with Don's, you know, mindset and his training ability, I became the WBA Feather Central champion on 2003 and knocked the opponent out in the 8th round.
You know, we were talking the other day, and we were kind of, you know, not that I'm knocking any fighter, but we were kind of making fun, truthfully, of some of these fighters today. I mean, you look at your record in your second pro fight, you're fighting a guy that had 3 pro fights. He was 2-1 with 2 knockouts today in a 4-round fight. Today, you know, these young fighters would say, "Oh no, I'm not, 2 wins. No, I'm not fighting that guy." You know, your third fight, you know, you're fighting a guy with 11 pro fights. I mean, it's changed so much, and it's a shame because I don't think that the young fighters today are getting the experience. Everybody's so afraid to lose, right? They're so afraid to lose that that I believe I'm not going to really blame the fighters because you know as well as I do. You know, if anybody asked you, hey, you know, Chelo, you want to fight so and so? You're like, I don't care if that's the guy you want me to fight, I'll fight him. I'll fight anybody, right? Well, that's the mentality of a fighter. But they're not the ones setting up the fights. The manager or the promoter, and they're like, well, we can't have him lose. So they put him in with a guy that they know they can beat. Well, as a fighter, how do you get better when you're fighting opposition that doesn't even deserve to be in the same ring with you? I mean, you know, it's like getting that 250-pound heavy bag that you're talking about. You know, you're not getting better. What's your thoughts on that in terms of the younger fighters today? And can there be anything done to help them, you know, understand that it's only helping them to challenge themselves sooner than waiting for a title shot?
Well, in my personal opinion and what I went through as I was in my pro career, Don Khan flat out told me, he goes, you know, we weren't signed with a promoter. So my first, I think 5 fights or 6 fights were with Louis de Cuba and Leon from Warrior Boxing. So I would go on those shows, and Don would flat out tell me, whoever they put us, what we got to do, we got to fight. If this is what you want to do, he told me, I told you I'll help you become a champion, but you got to do what you need to do, and we need to find out what you can do right from the get-go. So my mindset was that alone. So, you know, when you see these boxers, like, you can train for speed, you could train for power, you can train for IQ, you can train, but you can't train the heart. You either have it or you don't have it.
Yep.
You know, that's just my personal opinion. And I had a lot of heart, and that's what I dealt with. I believed in myself. And
go ahead, finish.
No, go ahead.
What I was going to say is what you're saying I relate to directly, because I had a middleweight that I worked with in the early 2000s, and same exact thing. You know, it's like We really didn't have a big promoter backing us, so we'd have to go into other people's backyards. And I used to tell this guy all the time, listen, if he hits you once, you got to hit him back 3 times. If he hits you twice, you got to hit him back 6 times. That's how you're going to win. And he never did. He was always like, if you hit him once, I'm going to hit you back. Boom, hit you back once. Well, he was always, the rides were always like, well, I got robbed. Well, yeah, I thought you won the fight too, but you didn't throw enough punches. When you're going into somebody's backyard, you got to decisively beat that guy. And that's what, it looks like you basically were brought up doing that. And, the end results were much better. One of the other things I admire about you is that, you start off in boxing. You didn't have a long amateur career, and quite frankly, your pro career, it expanded a long period of time, dates-wise, but 14 pro fights. But you're still in the sport of boxing. You're involved now with the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame, and it's like you're giving back. And to me, you're a boxing guy, and that's what boxing needs: more boxing people that are involved in the sport. What's your thoughts on the fact that it doesn't take much to be involved? I mean, look, I never trained a fighter in my life. I've done everything else in the sport, but I've never trained a fighter. But yet I could pay the $25, $50, whatever they charge, cornerman license, and be the head trainer for a fight. I don't think that that's right. I think that there should be some kind of training or certificate that that trainers need to get, because I see a lot of rah-rah men in the sport today.
I agree. I think that, and I think many will agree with us. There's, I think a trainer is just as important as a fighter, and any true trainer is going to say you're the one in the ring and you're the one fighting, but you need that individual outside the ring to show you what you're not doing. Not show you, but to explain to you what you need to do, how you need to do it. But these days, it's just different. It's just different. You have a lot of, a lot of individuals that don't meet the criteria to be a trainer.
Well,
I think
I also think that people, that us, society, don't hold themselves accountable anymore. If you didn't perform the way you wanted in a fight, I'm sure you got down on yourself harder than anybody else would have. I just know you, and I know that that's what you would have done. I'm the same way in life. If I don't succeed with something, I look in the mirror and blame myself. I think a lot of younger people today will give you the reason why. I didn't have the right, I didn't have my normal routine this time, or I didn't have this, or they immediately make excuses. And what makes it worse, after the fight, they'll say something like, listen, I don't want to make an excuse, but, and as soon as you hear but, the excuse is coming.
Yeah, it's coming. One of the things, for me, again, I can only speak for myself. I had a short career, but in those short careers, Billy, I won 2 titles.
Right,
but
right. No, it's a successful career.
And the things that I appreciated was the individuals that I surrounded myself with at that time. Like Nate Campbell. Nate Campbell said Chelo was part of one of the best eras in the state of Florida. And that's when I was fighting Nate Campbell, Antoine Echols, Jeff Lacey, Antonio Tarver, David Santos, Robert Daniels, Casamayor, so these are the people that I surrounded myself with. My first few fights, I was with Casamayor and Ramon Garbey. I actually lived with Ramon Garbey when he fought James Toney.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Santiago Samaniego, which is Roberto Duran's, I think, first cousin and Dalia's second cousin, when he fought Mamadou in Europe and knocked him out, I was his only sparring partner for that fight. So
did you get a lot of good sparring?
Oh, 100%. I sparred with Samaniego, with Garbey, Antoine Echols, Jeff Lacey. I sparred with Winky one time.
That must have been Winky was such a great defensive fighter.
Oh man, I think I didn't even touch him one time. I'm being honest.
Yeah, he would frustrate the heck out of people.
Yeah,
You know?
but he worked with me. He's a great dude. Hot Rod, Gino McClellan. Like I sparred with so many individuals, but I say all this for this reason: speaking to these fighters and being surrounded around that era with Nate Campbell and them. To me, those individuals there are boxing, so their stories, how they fought. Look at Nate Campbell. Look at what Nate Campbell accomplished as an older man. That takes heart. That takes courage. You can't train that. That was something he was determined. He was determined. He had ambition, and he accomplished that.
I tell you, I talk about Nate Campbell. I can't wait to see him in June because we had some fun in France one time, and I told you he does the best Don King impression I've ever heard. I mean,
he does.
I was sitting right next to him, and I could have sworn Don King was in the car with us, but
he's doing comedy now. So
yeah, you were telling me.
He's awesome. Man. He's a good. I talk to him at least once a week.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him.
Billy, but being back in boxing, being part of the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame board, I'm grateful for that. Being the vice president of the National Boxing Association, I'm grateful for that. The accolades that I'm receiving, I'm grateful for that. And why do I say that? Like people say, Chelo, how do you feel? The reality is, I'm grateful, I'm humbled, and I just can't thank the individuals that believe in me, because everything that I just mentioned there, that's a blessing. That's people believing in me. That's people nominating me. My 2 titles that I fought for, I don't care what anyone has to say. At my time, I had to earn those. I fought for those. That's what I earned. Everything else that I'm receiving now, that's a blessing. That's God's grace, in my personal opinion. So, I'm grateful to be part of this, and with the opportunities that I've been given and the awards that I've been given, I'm just going to continue to be the best human that I can be for myself, not for no one else. Because as long as I'm for me, I'll be able to do for everyone else. And I hope I can bring some type of change and to boxing, in the sense of, with me, is what you see is what you get, Billy. You've known me for a while now, so and I haven't changed since.
And I love. Well, you have. When I saw you, I was like, "You're a monster now." I mean. But one last thing I'm going to ask you, and then we got to pack it in. But
no,
one of the things that boxing gets such a bad rep, because there are some guys that aren't good ambassadors for the sport. I look at you and I say, here's a cat that is a good ambassador for the sport. It's good to especially now that you're getting more involved with the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame and the things around the sport, not so much inside the ring, but outside of the ring. If you could pick one thing that, boxing taught you while you were inside the ring that you use today, that you still use today, what would it be?
Be true to who you are. Be true to who you are. And what do I mean by that? If this is the sport that you chose, then you fight who you need to fight. That's it. I mean, and I think that to me, one of the best fighters, and I say this, to me, is Rocky Marciano. Why do I say Rocky Marciano? Did Rocky Marciano have a choice of who he was going to fight back then?
Nobody did back then.
That's my point. And he retired 50-0 as a
49
champion.
49-0, because this is what Floyd brags that he beat his record.
No, I thought he was 50-0.
No, Rocky Marciano was 49-0.
Okay, either way, I thought he was 50.
Right,
49-0.
But you see, that's the joke of Mayweather's 50-0, because it's only I mean, Julio Cesar Chavez fought 80 fights before he lost.
And before he lost his first fight.
I know. But
So-
but the significance behind the 49-0 with Rocky Marciano was that's a heavyweight. Nobody's ever done that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody. I doubt anybody ever will. But anyway, listen, man. I really appreciate you taking time to come on the show. I'd love to have you back on, and I can't wait to. We'll have you back on before June, but I can't wait to get down there. You know, I'm hoping that some of the people that supported you when you were there. I'm not going to be able to bring as many people as you had.
There's going to be people there, man. But I want to say, before I go, I say, Billy, it's an honor to be there when you get inducted. It's an honor to be part of the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame, brother, and to see you get inducted. To me, it's going to be special, because you're one of the first ones that gave me an opportunity to even be on a radio show years ago. You know what I mean? And here I am, back again with you and was able to spend time with you on the announcement. And I'm going to spend a weekend with you in June. I'm just grateful, man. And you deserve all the flowers that you're receiving, brother. So congratulations, man.
I love it. That was like, I that's all I keep talking about, and I'll tell you, I'm going to be there Thursday night. I'll be there Thursday night. I'm all set. I told you the other night.
We'll be there. We'll be there Thursday as well.
Yeah. I'll be driving, so I'll be probably tired as heck, but I'll be there, man. And I can't wait. And just try and stay warm. Try and stay warm. I know it's a little cold there.
I got a sweater on. So
yeah. I took 3 of my sweatshirts off to do the show. I'll put them back on when I leave the studio here. But listen, brother, it was great chatting.
God bless you, bro. Thank you so much for having me, man.
You got to come on at least once more before June.
Hey, you let me know whenever. I'm here for you, brother.
All right, man. Have a good one.
God bless you, man.
That's my man Chelo. And listen, you guys all got to come out with us in June and check out the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame induction that I'll be part of. And I can't wait to see my man Chelo again. Jose Chelo Alonzo, great family, great guy. What a story. Hey, listen, boys and girls, we're a little over our time. I appreciate you joining us. Make sure you tune in next week. We got a pretty good show scheduled. Not only will I have Alex Papali join me, but also Carl King, because our topic next week, in addition to talking about the big fight, will be, as a request from one of our viewers and listener, to talk about the behind the scenes for a boxing manager and a promoter. What actually do they do? We'll talk about that next week. So make sure you tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this.